My name is Serafina, and watching my sister Brittany dump my brand new laptop into our family pool while smirking about teaching me a lesson was the moment I realized my family had been playing a completely different game than I thought. That $1,500 machine sinking to the bottom represented more than just destroyed property. It was the final straw in 26 years of being treated like the family disappointment while my golden child sister got away with literal crimes. But what Brittany did not know was that her little tantrum had just given me the perfect excuse to dig deeper into why she always seemed to have unlimited money for her lifestyle, and what I found would destroy our family forever. Before we dive into how I brought down an entire empire of lies, where are you watching this from? If this story of family betrayal and ultimate justice sounds like something you need to hear, smash that like button because trust me, what happens next will blow your mind. And definitely subscribe because family karma stories like this one are exactly what we live for here. The laptop incident happened on a sweltering July afternoon when I refused to lie to our parents about Brittany's whereabouts for the third time that month. She had been telling Mom and Dad she was volunteering at the animal shelter every Tuesday and Thursday evening, but I knew she was actually at some guy's apartment downtown. When she begged me to cover for her again, I finally said no. "Come on, Sarah," she had whined, using the nickname only she called me. "Just tell them I'm with you if they ask. It's not a big deal." "Actually, it is a big deal," I replied, not looking up from my graphic design work. I had been freelancing to save money for graduate school, and this particular project was due the next morning. "I'm tired of being your alibi Brit. Figure out your own life." That was when she grabbed my laptop right off the pool deck table where I had been working and hurled it into the deep end. The splash sent waters cascading over my sketches and notes, ruining hours of work along with the computer itself. "That's your punishment for saying no to family," she had sneered, tossing her blonde hair over her shoulder. "Maybe next time you'll remember what loyalty means." I stared at the bubbles rising from where my laptop had disappeared, feeling something fundamental shift inside me. This was not sibling rivalry anymore. This was destruction of my livelihood, my dreams, my future. The laptop contained not just my current projects, but months of portfolio work I needed for graduate applications. "You're going to replace that," I said quietly, my voice deadly calm. Brittany laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "With what money you know I'm broke." But that was the thing. I knew she was not broke. Brittany always had money for designer clothes, expensive dinners, weekend trips to wine country with her friends. She drove a nearly new BMW while I took the bus. She got her nails done weekly at the fanciest salon in town while I cut my own hair. And when I had asked her about it before, she always gave vague answers about tips from waitressing or gifts from friends. Our parents, David and Margaret, had always favored Brittany. She was the outgoing one, the charming one, the one who could make people laugh and feel special. I was the quiet, serious daughter who preferred books to parties and had opinions that made family dinners uncomfortable. They paid for Brittany's apartment while I lived at home to save money. They bought her car while telling me it would build character to work for my own transportation. They funded her constant shopping sprees while lecturing me about financial responsibility. But watching my laptop sink to the bottom of that pool, I realized something crucial. I had been focusing on the wrong injustice. The real question was not why our parents treated us differently. The real question was where Brittany was getting the money to fund a lifestyle that her part-time restaurant job could never support. That night, while Brittany was out on another of her mysterious dates, I did something I had never done before. I snooped through her room. I told myself I was looking for evidence of how she afforded her lifestyle, some proof I could take to our parents to show them how their precious daughter was deceiving them. What I found was so much worse than I had imagined. Hidden behind her bedroom mirror was a folder containing bank statements, invoices, and receipts that made my blood run cold. Brittany had been systematically stealing money from Dad's construction business for over 2 years. The documents showed a pattern of fake vendor payments, inflated expense reports, and outright cash theft that totaled nearly $80,000. But the truly sickening part was how sophisticated the operation was. She had created fake companies with official-looking invoices for supplies that were never delivered, services that were never performed, equipment that never existed. She had been signing Dad's name on checks and depositing them into accounts she controlled. She had even been charging personal expenses to the business credit card and then altering the statements before Dad saw them. My hands shook as I photographed every document with my phone. This was not teenage rebellion or sibling rivalry. This was felony theft from our own father's livelihood money that should have been supporting our family's future. Dad worked 14-hour days in the blazing sun to build his business, and Brittany was bleeding it dry to fund her Instagram-perfect lifestyle. The next morning at breakfast, I watched Brittany butter her toast and chat cheerfully with Mom about her plans for the day, mentioning something about helping Dad organize receipts at the office later. The casual way she lied, the complete absence of guilt or shame on her face. It was like watching a stranger wearing my sister's skin. "Sarah, honey, you look tired," Mom said, studying my face with concern. "Are you feeling all right?" I glanced at Brittany, who was scrolling through her phone without a care in the world. "Just thinking about some work stuff," I replied carefully. "Speaking of work," Dad interjected, looking frustrated. "I cannot figure out where all this money is going. The business should be more profitable than this, but every month it feels like we're barely breaking even, despite having more clients than ever." Brittany did not even flinch. "Maybe you need better bookkeeping software, Daddy," she suggested sweetly. "I could research some options for you." The audacity was breathtaking. She was offering to help solve the very problem she was creating, probably so she could recommend software that would make her theft even easier to hide. That was the moment I decided that destroying my laptop was going to be the biggest mistake Brittany ever made. She had given me the motivation I needed to dig deeper, and what I had found was going to change everything. But I also realized that if I was going to take down someone this calculating, this skilled at deception, I needed to be smarter than just running to our parents with accusations. I needed a strategy. The strategy came to me during my shift at the coffee shop where I worked weekends. If Brittany was sophisticated enough to run a 2-year embezzlement scheme, she was smart enough to have contingency plans. Going to our parents without ironclad proof would just give her time to destroy evidence and spin the narrative in her favor. She was the golden child, after all. They would probably believe her tearful denials over my jealous accusations. I needed leverage, and I needed witnesses. My opportunity came when Brittany announced she was planning a surprise birthday party for Dad's 52nd birthday the following month. She volunteered to handle all the planning and expenses, insisting it would be her gift to him. The bitter irony of throwing Dad a party with his own stolen money was apparently lost on her. "I want to make this really special," she gushed over dinner one evening. "I'm thinking we rent the banquet hall at the country club, hire a catering company, maybe even get that jazz band Dad loves. It's going to cost a fortune, but Daddy deserves the best." Mom's eyes filled with tears of pride. "Brittany, sweetheart, that's incredibly generous of you. But are you sure you can afford something that elaborate?" "Oh, don't worry about money," Brittany waved dismissively. "I've been saving up for months. Plus, I got a huge tip last week from this corporate party I catered for the restaurant." More lies delivered with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned. But this time I was ready. Over the next 3 weeks, I quietly gathered more evidence while pretending to help with party planning. I volunteered to pick up decorations, coordinate with vendors, and handle RSVPs, all tasks that gave me legitimate reasons to ask questions and to access information. What I discovered was that Brittany was indeed planning an extravagant celebration that would cost nearly $12,000. But here was the fascinating part: she was paying for it with a business credit card from Dad's company. I watched her hand over the corporate American Express at the florist, the caterer, the band booking agency. Each time she signed with practiced ease, chatting pleasantly about how successful her father's construction business was and how he deserved this celebration. The vendors never questioned it. Why would they? She was confident, well-dressed, and had a credit card that worked. Meanwhile, I was building my own file of evidence. Screenshots of her social media posts showing expensive purchases timeline matched with business expense reports. Photos of invoices for fake vendors whose addresses led to abandoned buildings or non-existent streets. Bank records I had accessed through her carelessly saved passwords showing deposits that corresponded exactly to missing business funds. But the breakthrough came when I decided to visit one of the fake vendor addresses in person. According to Brittany's falsified records, Premier Construction Supplies had been paid nearly $15,000 over the past year for materials delivered to various job sites. The address listed was in an industrial district across town, so I drove there one Saturday morning, expecting to find an empty lot or abandoned warehouse. Instead, I found something much more interesting: a small accounting firm called Morrison and Associates. The receptionist was a friendly woman in her 60s who seemed delighted to have a visitor. "Can I help you, dear? I'm looking for Premier Construction Supplies," I said, showing her the invoice. This address was listed as their location. She frowned, studying the document. "Oh my, that's very odd. We've been at this address for 12 years and there's never been a construction supply company here. But," she paused, recognition dawning on her face. "You know, this is interesting. About a year ago, we started getting mail for that exact company name. We kept returning it to the post office marked Return to Sender, but it kept coming." My heart started racing. "What kind of mail?" "Business correspondence mostly. Bank statements, I think. We assumed it was just a mistake with the postal service." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between you and me, it felt a bit suspicious. Who starts a construction supply company but never actually occupies the building?" I thanked her and sat in my car outside the building, pieces clicking into place. Brittany had not just created fake invoices. She had established an entire fake business identity, complete with a mailing address she could use for bank statements and correspondence. The sophistication was staggering. But it was also her downfall, because now I had a witness who could testify that Premier Construction Supplies was completely fictional. That evening, I made my decision. The party was scheduled for the following Saturday, which meant Dad would be getting his credit card statement early the following week. When he saw $12,000 in unauthorized charges for his own surprise party, there would be questions that even Brittany's charm could not answer, but I was not going to wait for that moment. I was going to create my own moment in front of witnesses who mattered. I called my Uncle Robert, Dad's older brother and business partner. Uncle Robert was a former police detective who now handled the security and insurance aspects of their construction company. He was also the only family member who had ever treated Brittany and me exactly equally without favoritism or special consideration. "Uncle Robert, I need to talk to you about something serious concerning the business. Can you meet me tomorrow evening? And I think you should bring your business attorney with you." The tone of my voice must have conveyed the gravity of the situation, because he agreed immediately, no questions asked. The next evening, I sat across from Uncle Robert and James Fitzgerald, the company's lawyer, in a conference room at their office. I had organized all my evidence into a clear timeline: bank statements, fake invoices, social media posts, vendor contacts, and witness statements from Morrison and Associates. "Jesus Christ," Uncle Robert whispered after reviewing the documents for 20 minutes. "Serafina, how long have you known about this?" 3 weeks, I replied honestly. "Ever since she destroyed my laptop and I started wondering how she afforded her lifestyle." Mr. Fitzgerald was taking notes rapidly. "This is definitely criminal fraud and embezzlement. The amounts involved make it a felony. But Robert, you need to understand that if we pursue this, it's going to destroy your family." "She already destroyed our family," I said quietly. "She's been stealing Dad's future, his retirement, his ability to trust anyone. The destruction already happened. We just haven't acknowledged it yet." Uncle Robert looked at me with something like respect for the first time in my life. "What do you want to do, Sarah?" "I want her to confess publicly at the party she's throwing with stolen money. I want Dad to hear the truth from her own mouth in front of everyone who matters. And then I want her to face the legal consequences of what she's done. And if she refuses to confess," I smiled, feeling something cold and determined settle in my chest, "then we'll have the police waiting in the wings with a warrant for her arrest. Either way, this ends Saturday night." The week leading up to Dad's party became a masterclass in strategic planning. Uncle Robert proved to be an invaluable ally, bringing both his investigative experience and his deep love for his younger brother to the mission. Together, we crafted a plan that would give Brittany one chance to come clean voluntarily before facing the full legal consequences of her actions. The key, Uncle Robert explained as we sat in his home office surrounded by evidence files, is controlling the environment. She's had 2 years to perfect her lies and manipulations. If we confront her privately, she'll have time to destroy evidence, create new stories, and potentially flee. But if we do it publicly in front of people whose opinions matter to her, the social pressure might crack her facade. James Fitzgerald had been busy all week preparing the legal groundwork. "I've been in contact with Detective Morrison at the Financial Crimes Unit now," he reported during one of our evening strategy sessions. "They're very interested in this case, especially given the sophistication of the fraud scheme. They're prepared to execute search warrants on her apartment and vehicle immediately following any confession or arrest." But our most unexpected ally emerged on Thursday evening when my phone rang with a call from someone I had not spoken to in over a year. My cousin Marcus, Uncle Robert's son, who worked as a forensic accountant for a major firm in the city. "Dad told me what's been happening," Marcus said without preamble. "I want to help." Marcus had always been the family overachiever. Harvard MBA, six-figure salary, the kind of success that made holiday gatherings awkward for everyone else. But he had also been one of the few relatives who never treated me like the disappointing daughter. "I've been running some unofficial analysis on the documents you collected," he continued. "Serafina, this is so much worse than you realize. Based on the patterns I'm seeing, I estimate Brittany has stolen closer to $120,000, not 80, and some of these transactions suggest she might have accomplices." My blood went cold. Accomplices? Look at the timing of some of these fake vendor payments. They're clustered around specific dates when your dad was out of town on big projects. Someone had to be providing inside information about his schedule, his typical spending patterns, even his signature style. This level of coordination suggests she had help from someone with regular access to the business operations. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Someone else in our family circle was involved in bleeding Dad's business dry. Someone we trusted, someone who had been sitting at our dinner table celebrating our holidays, pretending to care about our family while participating in its destruction. "Do you have any theories about who?" I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. "I have suspicions, but I need more data. Here's what I propose I take tomorrow off work and spend the day doing a deep forensic analysis of all the business records. If there is a co-conspirator, I'll find the evidence trail. But Sarah..." His voice became serious. "You need to be prepared for the possibility that this betrayal goes deeper than just Brittany." Friday became the longest day of my life. While Brittany flitted around town picking up last-minute party supplies and posting excited social media updates about the surprise she was planning for the best dad in the world, I spent the day in a state of anxious anticipation, waiting for Marcus's call. When my phone finally rang at 6:30 that evening, Marcus's voice was grim. "We need to meet, all of us, tonight." An hour later, I sat in Uncle Robert's living room with him, Marcus, and James Fitzgerald, staring at a laptop screen that displayed financial records I could barely comprehend, but whose implications were crystal clear. "The co-conspirator is Mom," Marcus said without preamble. The words hit the room like a bomb. Uncle Robert went pale. James started taking rapid notes, and I felt the world tilt sideways. "Are you absolutely certain?" Uncle Robert asked, his voice barely a whisper. Marcus nodded grimly. "The evidence is overwhelming. Look at these patterns." He clicked through several spreadsheets. "Every major theft corresponds with times when Margaret had access to the business accounts. She's been co-signing checks, approving expense reports, even helping to create some of the fake vendor documentation. Her signature appears on at least 30% of the fraudulent transactions." I stared at the screen, trying to process what this meant. My mother, the woman who lectured me about honesty and integrity, who prided herself on being a devoted wife supporting Dad's business dreams, had been working with Brittany to systematically rob him. "But why?" I whispered. "Dad works so hard to provide for us. Why would Mom help steal from her own family?" "Money makes people do terrible things," James said quietly. "And from what I can see here, they've been planning this for a long time. Some of these fake vendor setups date back almost 3 years. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was a calculated long-term strategy to embezzle as much as possible before anyone noticed. Uncle Robert stood up abruptly and walked to his window, staring out at the darkness. David's going to be devastated. Losing a daughter is one thing, but losing a wife too. This will destroy him. He's already being destroyed, I said, finding my voice again. Every day, he works himself into exhaustion, trying to understand why his business isn't profitable, wondering if he's failing as a provider. At least this way, he'll know the truth. He'll know it wasn't his fault. Marcus closed his laptop. So, what's the plan now? Do we still confront them at the party, or do we handle this privately, given that Margaret is involved? I thought about it for a long moment, weighing the options. Part of me wanted to protect Dad from the public humiliation of learning about his wife's betrayal in front of friends and family. But another part of me realized that private confrontations would just give them more opportunities to destroy evidence, coordinate their stories, and potentially disappear. We stick with the original plan, I decided. But we modify it. We start with Brittany get her confession about the embezzlement and see if she implicates Mom voluntarily. If she doesn't, we present the evidence about Mom's involvement separately. And if they both deny everything, Uncle Robert asked. James spoke up. Then Detective Morrison and her team will be waiting outside with search warrants and arrest warrants. Either way, this ends tomorrow night. As I drove home that evening, I thought about the family dynamics that had led to this moment. I had spent years feeling like the outsider, the disappointing daughter who could never measure up to Brittany's charm or earn Mom's approval. Now I understood why they had been protecting a secret that required keeping me at arm's length. Including me in their inner circle would have risked exposing their crimes. The irony was almost funny. In trying to punish me for refusing to cover for Brittany's lies, they had accidentally given me the motivation to uncover the biggest lie of all. But as I pulled into our driveway and saw Mom's car in its usual spot, Dad's work truck parked beside it, I felt the weight of what tomorrow would bring. By this time, 24 hours from now, our family would be permanently fractured. Dad would know that the two people he trusted most in the world had been systematically betraying him for years. I sat in my car for a few extra minutes looking at our house and thinking about all the family dinners, holiday celebrations, and ordinary moments that had happened within those walls while this elaborate deception was taking place. How many times had Dad mentioned feeling financially stressed while Mom and Brittany exchanged knowing looks across the dinner table? How many times had he blamed himself for problems they were creating? Tomorrow night at a party paid for with stolen money in front of friends and family who thought they knew us the truth would finally come out. And there would be no going back from whatever came after. As I walked toward the house, I could hear laughter coming from the kitchen. Mom and Brittany probably going over final party details, excited about their big surprise for Dad. They had no idea that the real surprise would be on them. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that should have made Dad's birthday party perfect. I woke up early, my stomach churning with anticipation and dread, knowing that in 12 hours, everything would be different. The plan was solid, the evidence was overwhelming, and our team was ready. Or so I thought. My phone buzzed at 8:15 with a text from Marcus. Need to talk. Emergency. Meet me at the diner on 5th Street in 30 minutes. Something in the urgency of his message made my blood run cold, but I threw on clothes and drove across town to the small restaurant where we had agreed to meet. I found Marcus sitting in a corner booth, looking haggard and stressed in a way I had never seen before. "We have a problem," he said before I even sat down. "A big problem." "What happened?" Marcus glanced around nervously, then leaned forward and lowered his voice. "I got a call at 6 this morning from my boss at the firm. Apparently, someone contacted him yesterday claiming I was using company resources to conduct unauthorized investigations into family members. They threatened to report the firm to the state licensing board for allowing personal vendettas to masquerade as professional forensic work." My heart sank. Who would have called your boss? That's what I've been trying to figure out. The only people who knew about my involvement were you, Dad, and James Fitzgerald. He paused, his expression growing darker. "But here's the thing, Sarah. My boss knew details about our investigation that I never told anyone at work. Specific amounts, time frames, even the names of the fake vendors. Someone with inside knowledge of our entire plan contacted my firm. The implications hit me like a freight train. You think someone in our group is feeding information to Brittany and Mom? I think someone in our group has been playing both sides from the beginning. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a text message thread. Look at this. These are messages between me and James Fitzgerald from yesterday discussing strategy for tonight's confrontation. But look at the timestamps. I studied the messages, my confusion growing. I don't understand. What am I supposed to be seeing? The messages show as delivered and read, but James never responded to any of them. When I called his office this morning, his secretary said he's been in court all week in another city and won't be back until Monday. But someone was reading and responding to these messages pretending to be him. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Are you saying James Fitzgerald isn't who we think he is? I'm saying the man we've been working with this week isn't James Fitzgerald. Marcus's voice was grim. I called the real James Fitzgerald's office this morning. The actual lawyer has been in court in Seattle for a wrongful death trial that started Monday and won't conclude until next week. He hasn't been in town, hasn't met with us, and has no knowledge of any embezzlement investigation. My mind raced, trying to process this revelation. Then who have we been meeting with? Who has all our evidence? I have no idea, but whoever it is has been playing us perfectly. Think about it, Sarah. He encouraged us to plan a public confrontation instead of going to the police immediately. He discouraged us from involving Dad until tonight. He's been collecting every piece of evidence we've gathered and probably passing it all along to Brittany and Mom. I felt sick. Not only had our plan been compromised, but we had handed our enemies a complete roadmap of everything we knew and everyone who was helping us. Worse, we had delayed involving law enforcement at the fake lawyer's suggestion, giving them time to destroy evidence and prepare counter-strategies. What about Uncle Robert? I asked desperately. Is he part of this too? Marcus shook his head. Dad's been just as deceived as we have. I called him this morning after I found out about the fake lawyer situation. He's furious and heartbroken. Apparently, the man we thought was James Fitzgerald contacted him earlier this week, claiming to be conducting a routine audit of the business on behalf of their insurance company. Dad gave him access to financial records thinking it was legitimate. So, Brittany and Mom know everything. They know about our evidence, our timeline, our plan for tonight. They've probably already destroyed anything incriminating and prepared their defense. It's worse than that, Marcus said quietly. I think tonight's party is a trap. Think about it. Why would Brittany plan such an expensive public celebration right when she knows we're closing in on her? Unless she's planning to use it as an opportunity to discredit us publicly. I stared at him, the full scope of the manipulation becoming clear. You think she's going to paint us as the villains? Make it look like we're the ones trying to destroy the family with false accusations. I think she's going to claim that you've been embezzling money and trying to frame her for it. The fake lawyer probably helped her manufacture evidence to support that narrative. When Dad gets up to thank everyone for coming to his surprise party, she's going to drop a bombshell accusation against you. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Not only had they stolen from Dad's business, but they were going to use his birthday party, paid for with stolen money, as the venue to destroy my reputation and possibly my freedom. We have to warn Dad, I said, standing up from the booth. We have to tell him what's really happening before tonight. Marcus grabbed my arm. With what proof they've had a week to prepare their counter-narrative. By now, they probably have bank records showing deposits into accounts with your name on them, forged documents with your signature, maybe even fake surveillance footage. Meanwhile, all of our real evidence was handed over to their fake lawyer ally. I sank back into the booth, feeling defeated for the first time since this whole ordeal began. So what do we do? Just let them get away with it. No, Marcus said firmly. We fight back. But we have to be smarter than they are. We need to gather new evidence they don't know about, find allies they haven't compromised, and change the battlefield completely. How do we do that with only 8 hours? Until the party. Marcus smiled grimly. We use their arrogance against them. They think they've won, which means they're going to get careless. And there's one piece of evidence they don't know we have. the witness from Morrison and Associates who can testify that Premier Construction Supplies is completely fictional. But will that be enough to counter whatever they've prepared? It will have to be, because Sarah, if we don't expose the truth tonight, you're probably going to be arrested on embezzlement charges before the weekend is over. They've set this up perfectly. They steal the money, frame you for the theft, and emerge as the grieving family members who discovered their daughter's terrible crimes. I thought about Dad probably at home right now getting ready for what he thought would be a wonderful celebration of his 52nd birthday, completely unaware that the two most important women in his life had been systematically robbing him while planning to destroy his other daughter. "There's something else," Marcus said quietly. "I did some digging into our fake lawyer friend this morning. His real name is Derek Sullivan, and he's got a criminal record for fraud and identity theft. More importantly, he's Brittany's boyfriend, the guy she's been sneaking around to see all those nights she claimed to be volunteering." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Brittany hadn't just been stealing money and lying to our family. She had been working with a career criminal to orchestrate the entire scheme, and now they were planning to pin everything on me. "So what's the plan?" I asked, feeling a cold determination settling in my chest. "We crashed their party," Marcus said, "but not the way they're expecting." The afternoon became a frantic race against time to rebuild our case from scratch. Marcus and I drove straight to Uncle Robert's house, where we found him pacing his living room like a caged animal, furious at being deceived by the fake lawyer and desperate to help his brother. "I should have known something was wrong," Uncle Robert kept repeating. 20 years as a cop, and I let some smooth-talking criminal walk right into our family business and steal our evidence. "We all got played," I said firmly. "But we still have options. We just need to approach this differently." Our first stop was Morrison and Associates, where the receptionist who had unknowingly been receiving mail for Brittany's fake company proved to be more helpful than we could have hoped. "Oh, you're back," she said cheerfully when we walked in. "I've been thinking about our conversation, and I remembered something that might interest you. After you left yesterday, I checked our mail logs, and we actually kept copies of some of those misdirected letters. Would you like to see them?" The letters were a goldmine. Bank statements for Premier Construction Supplies showing deposits that matched exactly with the payments from Dad's business. Correspondence with other fake vendors that revealed an entire network of fraudulent companies. Most importantly, several documents bearing Brittany's real signature alongside her fake business alias. "This is perfect," Marcus said as we photographed everything. "But we need more. We need real-time evidence that they can't claim was fabricated." That was when our unexpected new ally appeared. "Excuse me," said a voice behind us as we prepared to leave Morrison and Associates. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about Premier Construction Supplies." We turned to see a man in his 40s wearing a sheriff's department uniform. Deputy Michael Torres introduced himself as an investigator with the County Financial Crimes Unit who had been working a related case. "I've been tracking a fraud ring that uses fake construction supply companies to launder money from embezzlement schemes," he explained. "When I heard you mention Premier Construction Supplies, it caught my attention because that's one of the company names that's appeared in several other cases we're investigating." Marcus and I exchanged glances. "Are you saying Brittany is connected to other crimes?" "I'm saying the man she's been working with, Derek Sullivan, though he uses several aliases, has been running this same scam with multiple partners across 3 counties. Your sister isn't his first victim or accomplice. She's part of a larger criminal enterprise." Deputy Torres had been building a case against Derek for months, gathering evidence from multiple families who had been victimized by similar schemes. What he needed was someone willing to cooperate in a sting operation that would catch Derek and his accomplices in the act. "Here's what I propose," Torres said. "Tonight at your father's party, we set up surveillance equipment and record everything. When they attempt to frame you with their fabricated evidence, we'll have documentation of them committing additional crimes, conspiracy fraud, and attempted manipulation of evidence. Meanwhile, I'll have backup officers ready to execute arrest warrants the moment they incriminate themselves." For the first time all day, I felt hope returning. But what if they don't take the bait? What if they just enjoy the party and don't try to frame me tonight? "They'll take the bait," Deputy Torres said confidently, "because I'm going to give them irresistible motivation." An hour later, Torres called Brittany using a spoofed number that appeared to come from a local bank. Pretending to be a fraud investigator, he informed her that suspicious activity had been detected on accounts associated with Premier Construction Supplies and that a formal investigation would begin Monday morning. That should panic them into accelerating their timeline, Torres explained as we monitored the call. They'll want to pin the blame on someone else immediately before any official investigation can uncover the truth. We spent the rest of the afternoon setting up our own surveillance operation. Uncle Robert used his security company connections to obtain high-quality recording equipment that we strategically placed throughout the country club banquet hall where the party would be held. Marcus coordinated with Torres to ensure backup officers would be positioned nearby but out of sight. Meanwhile, I played the role I had been preparing for all week, the unsuspecting sister getting ready for Dad's birthday celebration. At home, I found Brittany in full party planning mode, seemingly without a care in the world. She chatted excitedly about the menu, the decorations, and how surprised Dad would be when he walked into the banquet hall. "I'm so glad everything worked out perfectly," she said as she applied her makeup. "Tonight's going to be a night our family remembers forever." The double meaning wasn't lost on me. Tonight would indeed be unforgettable, just not in the way she anticipated. "By the way," she added casually, "I invited a few extra people. Some friends of mine wanted to meet the family. I hope you don't mind." I forced a smile. Of course not. The more people to celebrate Dad, the better. But I knew exactly who her friends were: Derek Sullivan and whoever else was involved in their criminal enterprise. They were planning to have witnesses present when they attempted to frame me, probably to make their accusations seem more credible. As we drove to the country club, I noticed Mom seemed unusually nervous. She kept checking her phone and fidgeting with her jewelry, behavior that was completely unlike her typical composed demeanor. "Everything okay, Mom?" I asked from the back seat. "Oh, just excited about the party," she replied, but her voice sounded strained. "I want everything to be perfect for your father." Dad, meanwhile, was genuinely surprised and touched by the celebration. Walking into the beautifully decorated banquet hall filled with friends, family, and colleagues from his construction business, he actually teared up at the thoughtfulness of it all. "I can't believe you girls planned all this," he said, pulling Brittany and me into a hug. "This is incredible." Looking around the room at the people who had come to honor Dad, his workers, his clients, our extended family, longtime friends, I felt the weight of what was about to happen. In a few hours, many of these relationships would be permanently damaged by the revelations that were coming. But as I caught Deputy Torres's subtle nod from across the room where he was posing as catering staff, I reminded myself that the damage had already been done. The lies, the theft, the betrayal, all of that had been happening for years. Tonight was just the night when everyone else would finally learn the truth. The real party was about to begin. The moment I had been preparing for arrived during Dad's thank you speech, just as Marcus had predicted. Dad stood at the front of the banquet hall holding a microphone and beaming with genuine happiness as he thanked everyone for coming to celebrate with him. "I have to admit, when Brittany said she was planning a surprise party, I never imagined anything this wonderful," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Looking around this room at all the people who have supported my business and my family over the years, I feel incredibly blessed." That was when Brittany stepped forward, her face arranged in an expression of tragic concern that would have won her an Academy Award. "Actually, Daddy, before we continue the celebration, there's something important I need to share with everyone." Her voice carried perfectly across the now silent room. "Something I discovered about the business that I think you all should know." I watched Dad's face change from confusion to concern as Brittany pulled out a folder of documents. Here it was. The moment they planned to destroy my life in front of everyone who mattered. "Over the past few weeks, I've been noticing some irregularities in the business finances." Brittany continued, her voice trembling with perfectly rehearsed emotion. "At first, I thought it might be simple accounting errors, but when I investigated further with the help of some financial experts, I discovered something heartbreaking." She gestured toward a man I recognized as Derek Sullivan, who stepped forward with his own folder of documents. To the room full of guests, he probably looked like a legitimate financial advisor, only I knew he was a career criminal helping to frame me for his own crimes. It appears that someone has been systematically embezzling money from the construction business for over 2 years, Brittany announced. Someone we trusted, someone we never would have suspected. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. I saw Uncle Robert tense up across the room, ready to defend me, but I caught his eye and shook my head slightly. Let them finish digging their own graves. The evidence shows that Serafina has been creating fake vendor accounts, forging signatures, and stealing nearly $90,000 from our family business. Brittany's voice broke convincingly as she said my name. I'm so sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry I had to be the one to tell you that your own daughter has been betraying your trust. Dad stared at me in shock, his face cycling through disbelief, hurt, and confusion. Sarah, is this true? Before I could respond, Derek Sullivan stepped forward with his fabricated evidence. I'm afraid the documentation is quite clear, Mr. Williams. Bank records, forged signatures, false invoicing. It's all here. That was when Deputy Torres made his move. Actually, Torres said loudly, dropping his catering disguise and displaying his badge, the documentation shows something very different. The room fell completely silent as Torres walked to the front, followed by 3 other officers who had been strategically positioned among the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Deputy Michael Torres with the County Sheriff's Financial Crimes Unit. We've been conducting an undercover investigation tonight, and I can tell you that everything you just heard was fabricated evidence designed to frame an innocent person. Brittany's face went white. Derek Sullivan took a step backward, looking for escape routes, but found his path blocked by officers. The real embezzlement scheme, Torres continued, was perpetrated by Brittany Williams and Margaret Williams working in partnership with Derek Sullivan, a known fraudster with convictions in 3 states. Over the past 2 years, they have systematically stolen approximately $120,000 from Williams Construction through an elaborate network of fake vendors and forged documentation. Mom stood up abruptly, her composure finally cracking. This is ridiculous. I would never steal from my own family. Really? Torres responded calmly. Then perhaps you can explain why your signature appears on 37 fraudulent checks made out to non-existent companies. He nodded to another officer who began displaying blown-up photographs of the evidence we had gathered. Bank statements, fake invoices, signature comparisons. Everything laid out clearly for the entire room to see. Furthermore, Torres continued, tonight's attempted frame-up of Serafina Williams constitutes additional charges of conspiracy to commit fraud and obstruction of justice. Everything that was said in this room tonight was recorded as evidence. Dad sank into a nearby chair, the shock of seeing his wife and daughter's signatures on stolen checks hitting him like physical blows. The man who had worked 14-hour days to build a business that could support his family was learning that 2 of the people he loved most had been systematically destroying it. I don't understand, he whispered. Why would you do this to us? For the first time all evening, Brittany's mask slipped completely. Gone was the sweet, charming daughter everyone adored. In her place stood someone cold and calculating. Because you never gave us enough, she snarled. Do you know what it's like being the daughter of a small-time construction worker watching my friends' parents buy them cars and clothes and trips while you lectured us about budgets and responsibility? So you stole from him, I said, finding my voice for the first time since the confrontation began. You stole from the man who worked himself into exhaustion trying to provide for us. I took what should have been mine anyway, Brittany shot back. What should have been ours? Mom understood that. She knew we deserved better than scraping by while you saved every penny for your precious graduate school dreams. Mom's confession came out in a broken whisper. I just wanted to give her the life she deserved. I wanted us to have nice things for once. The room full of guests, Dad's employees, clients, friends, and family, sat in stunned silence as 3 years of lies and theft unraveled completely. Several people were quietly crying, whether from shock or sympathy for Dad. Deputy Torres began reading Miranda rights as handcuffs were applied. Derek Sullivan tried to run, but was tackled by an officer near the banquet hall exit. Brittany maintained her defiant attitude even as she was arrested, glaring at me as if this was somehow my fault. But Mom's arrest was the hardest to watch. Seeing the woman who had raised me, who had taught me about right and wrong, being led away in handcuffs while Dad watched in devastation, it was almost too much to bear. Uncle Robert came over and put his arm around Dad's shoulders. "We're going to get through this, David. The business will survive and the family will rebuild." Dad looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. I'm sorry they tried to blame you for their crimes. I'm sorry I wasn't a better father to you." "Dad, none of this is your fault," I said firmly. "You worked harder than anyone should have to work to support us. They made their own choices." Over the following weeks, the full scope of the criminal enterprise emerged. Derek Sullivan had been running similar schemes across multiple states, targeting small business owners with the help of family member accomplices. Brittany and Mom had been recruited into his operation over a year ago when Brittany met him at a casino and he recognized her as the perfect inside person for targeting Dad's construction business. The legal consequences were swift and severe. Derek received 8 years in federal prison for racketeering and fraud across state lines. Brittany got 4 years for embezzlement and conspiracy. Mom received 3 years with the possibility of parole after 18 months, largely because she cooperated with investigators and showed genuine remorse for her actions. The emotional consequences took longer to process. Dad went through months of therapy to deal with the betrayal and guilt. The business survived largely thanks to Uncle Robert stepping in to help manage operations and several loyal employees who worked extra hours to keep projects on track. As for me, the experience changed everything about how I viewed family loyalty and justice. I finished my graduate school applications with Dad's enthusiastic support, using money recovered from the investigation to pay for the laptop Brittany had destroyed, which seemed like a lifetime ago now. But perhaps the most unexpected outcome was the new relationships that emerged from the wreckage. Uncle Robert and I became genuinely close for the first time, bonded by our shared commitment to protecting Dad and seeking justice. Marcus and I discovered that we actually enjoyed each other's company when we weren't being manipulated by criminal conspiracies. Even Deputy Torres became an unlikely friend, keeping us updated on the investigation and eventually helping Dad implement better financial security measures for the business. 6 months after that awful night, Dad and I were having dinner at a restaurant near my new apartment when he said something that perfectly captured how we had both changed. "You know, Sarah, for years I thought family meant accepting people no matter what they did, forgiving everything because of blood loyalty. But watching you fight for the truth, seeing your courage in standing up to people who were supposed to love you, that taught me that real family is about people who choose to do right by each other. Chosen family." I agreed, thinking about Uncle Robert, Marcus, and even Torres, people who had stood by us when everything fell apart. Exactly, and I choose you every day. Looking at Dad across that restaurant table, healthy and happy, in a way I hadn't seen him in years, I realized that sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is expose the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Justice isn't always pretty, but it's always necessary. The destruction of our family had also been its salvation. So here's my questions for you. Have you ever discovered that the people closest to you were living completely different lives than you thought? Have you ever had to choose between keeping family peace and exposing family crimes? Share your stories in the comments because I genuinely want to know. How do you handle betrayal when it comes from the people who are supposed to love you most? If this story of family karma and ultimate justice resonated with you, please hit that like button to let me know. Subscribe for more true stories about standing up for what's right, even when it costs everything. And share this video with anyone who needs to hear that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting this channel. I hope my experience reminds you that the truth really does set you free, even when that freedom comes at a price. Until next time, remember that your real family consists of people who choose to build you up rather than tear you down.